Hello everyone, here's what else I saw in January that I haven't already told you about. Movie number 1 is 1952's Red Ball Express. In the last months of World War II, the US Army at the European front stands in desperate need of supplies, so a group of soldiers is handpicked to drive a supply column along the dangerous route. It's a bit hard to judge this one because the experience of watching it was so frustrating. We watched it on YouTube where the uploader put an ad break every 5 minutes, and the quality wasn't the best, and for some reason closed captioning kept toggling on and off whenever I would skip the ad. Gah! It was a good movie though. The convoy is led by Jeff Chandler's lieutenant, a hardened man determined to accomplish his assignment even if it means dragging his men along with him. He gets the bare minimum of support from his sergeant, played by Alex Nichol, who has a long-standing vendetta against him. This was the source of a lot of the personal tension, and it wasn't hard to choose a side here. Eventually, even the other guys are nudging him to quit being a jerk and give the snarky comments a rest. Other key characters include Sidney Poitier's disgruntled corporal, Charles Drake's wannabe novelist, and Hugh O'Brien's cranky soldier with 1950s hair. It's a little hokey at times, but there are some endearing personalities here, and I like the way their good and bad experiences pull the men together, even against their will. Some of the more intense scenes are very well executed, and while the ensemble characters aren't as well drawn as the ones in, say, Battleground, which I rewatched in December, they're a likable lot. Well, most of them. Movie number 2 is 1935's If You Could Only Cook. This screwball comedy stars Herbert Marshall as a famous automobile designer who has just walked out on his job when he meets desperately unemployed Jean Arthur on a park bench. Unaware of his identity, she proposes they maximize their chances by applying for a job together as a married couple. Her plan succeeds, and they find themselves masquerading as a butler and a cook in an eccentric rich man's house. I really enjoyed this one. It has its weaker moments, and it's a little stingy when it comes to flirty moments that develop the romance, but the cast is delightful. Herbert Marshall is a pleasure to watch and listen to, as usual. I generally find his light touch in comedies like these enjoyable, while Jean Arthur, who was a natural in the genre, plays a charmingly dry and humorously inaccessible heroine. I also really like Leo Carrillo as their new boss, an Italian ex-bootlegger with a very particular palate who develops a soft spot for Arthur, and Lionel Stander as his skeptical right-hand man. There's not much to this one, but that's okay. At 1 hour and 11 minutes, it's short and sweet. Movie number 3 is 1995's Congo. When a team searching for diamonds in the jungle is mysteriously slaughtered and their leader disappears, Laura Linney is sent into the Congo to track him down, using a primatologist, played by Dylan Walsh, and his talking gorilla Amy as her cover to enter the country. Oh boy, I had heard that this wasn't a great movie, but I did not anticipate just how bad it was gonna be. It shouldn't have been awful. It was based on a Michael Crichton novel with effects by Industrial Light and Magic, guerrilla animatronics by Stan Winston, music by Jerry Goldsmith, Frank Marshall directed, with his wife Kathleen Kennedy producing, which isn't a ringing endorsement now, but in the 90s, I think it was a different story. With all that firepower, this should have been a decent movie, at least. But here we have a textbook case that proves a big studio production and an impressive creative team does not guarantee a good film. And yes, I am absolutely judging this movie more harshly because of the names attached to it. If it was some ambitious project by a group of unknowns with next to no budget, it would be a different story, and I would critique it accordingly. I would be more lenient and forgiving. Congo didn't have a huge budget. $50 million isn't, well, it's certainly not Waterworld levels. That came out the same year. It's only $15 million less than the budget of Jumanji, and $10 to $15 million less than the budget of Apollo 13. Those both came out in 1995. They were also effects-heavy films. They did much better at the box office. Obviously, Apollo 13 is huge critical success. Holds up great today. Jumanji holds up pretty well today. Congo, I saw a couple articles where people were claiming Congo deserves to be reevaluated, rediscovered, it deserves cult status. I don't see it. I don't get it. There's clunky, borderline bad dialogue, a confusing and disjointed tone, unconvincing and inconsistent animal effects, a particularly bad performance from Joe Don Baker, a poorly explained origin for the aggressive gray gorillas, a nonsensical deus ex machina, some of the worst lava effects I've ever seen, and a preposterous ending with our survivors drifting possibly into hostile airspace in a hot air balloon. These things started to pile on, and just when I thought it couldn't get worse, there'd be a fresh absurdity. Yet you can tell it wasn't meant to be ridiculous. Fun, yes, but I don't think they were going for campy. And if they were going for fun, they didn't really succeed. I did not enjoy myself watching this movie. And you guys know, I can have a good time watching a bad movie. I do give credit to Laura Linney for trying her best to keep her head above water, and she gets to kick some butt, even if she looks out of place doing it. Tim Curry did score a couple awkward little laughs. I liked Grant Heslov as the terrified guy way out of his depth, and Joe Pantoliano made his few minutes of screen time entertaining. I think they were trying to harken back to the adventure movies of olden days, and I enjoy those movies, but they missed the mark. Based on the opening and the climax, it seemed like they wanted to lean into the horror angle, so it might have been better if they had ditched the goofiest moments, refined some of the effects, and taken the violence from PG-13 to R, or not go that far because you don't want to shut out the young teens from the movie theater, but just ramp it up a little bit. Show us a little more, add a little more tension, more atmosphere, make it feel more like a horror movie, a horror adventure. But even if they had been more decisive about what genre they were in, there'd still be a lot of other problems. So, in the end, I just feel like, oof, yikes. What a mess. Movie number 4 is 1985's Ran, director Akira Kurosawa's epic retelling of Shakespeare's King Lear. Hidetora Ichimonji, a powerful but aging lord, divides his land amongst his 3 sons, giving the bulk to the eldest, who then conspires against him with the second son. I have to admit that I have always been skeptical of this film because of my reaction years ago to 1957's Throne of Blood, Kurosawa's retelling of Macbeth. I like Macbeth. I am very familiar with Macbeth, which might lead you to assume that I would like Throne of Blood, and over the years I've gotten many comments from people. I feel like every single time I talk about a movie directed by Kurosawa with Toshiro Mifune in it, saying, "Oh, you gotta see Throne of Blood!" And I'm always like, for me, it's not just the story of Macbeth that is appealing, it's the language, the poetry, the cadence of the early modern English. Obviously, you get none of that in a Japanese language retelling, so it just didn't appeal to me as much. And also, this was years ago. It was the first Kurosawa movie I saw in its entirety. The first movie I saw set in feudal Japan, a period I had had no exposure to, with customs, costumes, and makeup that was totally new to me, an acting style that was not familiar. There was some culture shock. All this preamble to say, I have never really felt inclined to watch Ran. Except people rave about it so much that I felt I ought to see it. And more recently I have had some curiosity about it. I've seen images and I was like, it does look like a beautiful film from a visual perspective. And when I noticed it was leaving the Criterion Channel on the 31st, I figured this was as good a time as any. And I responded much more favorably than I hitherto expected. It's partly because I have seen and liked 12 other Akira Kurosawa films in the interim, but I also think it makes a difference that I am not as well-versed in King Lear. I read it once, a long time ago, and I've never seen a production of it, live or on film. This allowed me to approach the narrative changes with a more open mind, and all told, based on what I can remember, it's a surprisingly faithful adaptation, considering the vast differences in setting. The most significant alteration is that in the play, King Lear has 3 daughters, Goneril, Regan, and Cordelia. Initially, I thought, that's too bad. You lose some of the bite in changing the genders. The shocking depiction of how these 2 women viciously scheme against their father, and some of the actions that they take, clashes with traditional views on womanhood and femininity. But Rand had to adjust to make the story more culturally viable, and later it more than makes up the difference with the character Lady Kaede. Wow, she was scary! Actress Mieko Harada gives a startling, fascinating performance, and in some ways she outshines Tatsuya Nakadai as the Great Lord, a complicated figure who, like Lear, inspires conflicting emotions. Is he a man to be pitied for his great suffering, or is he a fool whose weakness and past crimes have come back to bite him? And then on top of these strong, dominating characters, you have something I knew I was going to get, visual spectacle. The movie is brilliantly shot. It's colorful, and the colors matter. Kurosawa, as usual, uses weather and geography to tell the story. Gathering storm clouds, rain, wind, grassy hills, barren deserts, these all matter. And sound and music play an equally significant role. I loved how you could hear Lady Kaede approaching because of her rustling silks, a sound that comes to fill you with dread. Same with the groan of huge castle doors opening and closing, and the distant noise of galloping horses and armored foot soldiers surging forward. And the haunting, ominous score composed by Toru Takemitsu is really interesting. There's the chilling flute theme, which I was surprised to discover actually plays a role in the tragedy, and then the score has this surprisingly orchestral and Western-inspired, or Western-influenced theme that just grabs your attention, and it is most notable in a sequence that I have to assume is considered one of the best in the film, the combined army's attack on the castle and the subsequent slaughter. 2 things are striking about this sequence. One is that we witness the horror and bloodshed, but the fighting and the screams are muted as the music takes over. There is something unsettling about this, and strangely beautiful. The other thing is the violence. We get a couple little blood geysers, a severed limb, a gruesome double suicide. Men and women alike are pumped full of arrows, and there is so much blood flowing that it's pouring through the floorboards. It's a lot, but it drives home the coldness and mercilessness of this filial betrayal. My favorite line from the play, "How sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have a thankless child," is not spoken here, but the sentiment is there, and honestly, the gore is fitting for an adaptation of King Lear. It's a dark and brutal play with one of the goriest moments in all of Shakespeare. Titus Andronicus might be nastier, but I remember being more shocked by the eye-gouging scene in King Lear. King Lear is meant to be a shocking, devastating story with some gruesome elements, and therefore I think Kurosawa was justified in dialing that up. It's not just for shock value, it's not just for entertainment value, it's narrative reinforcement. I can't say that I loved the movie. It's not my new favorite Kurosawa movie, and I'm not thinking, oh boy, I can't wait to watch that again someday. It is bleak. But I did find it exceptionally well done. There's a lot to praise, and a lot to think about afterward. Movie number 5 is 2023's Anatomy of a Fall. A man is found dead in the snow. At first, it appears that he has fallen from the third story of his chalet, but when the autopsy suggests possible foul play, suspicion falls on his novelist wife. She is played by Sandra Hüller, who I had never heard of until awards season in 2024 because she appeared in 2 of the buzzed-about contenders, this and The Zone of Interest. There she played the Commandant's frigid, formidable wife. Here, as a bereaved woman facing a possible murder charge, she is tremendously vulnerable, but also full of contradictions. A mountain of evidence piles up against her as she struggles to explain herself and protect her relationship with her grieving, vision-impaired son. I found this a riveting watch. It's an intriguing mystery where you hang on every detail, trying to determine if what occurred was an accident, suicide, or homicide. It's an intense courtroom drama full of twists and turns. I would feel sure about something, and then a detail would be revealed, and I'd say, oh, well, I don't know. There's one major scene with an audio recording that mentally turned me inside out. And it's a personal drama about how a woman on trial handles the pressure, the insinuations, and the shame of having her dirty laundry discussed in public. Where I felt it faltered was the ending. There are so many revelations, gradual pieces of information dropped that we have to digest and reconcile with what we thought we knew. Our minds are going, I don't know why I'm speaking in the royal we, my mind was going all the time, trying to figure things out. When we reached the denouement, I found myself waiting for the other shoe to drop. It just felt like that was going to happen, and I kept watching the final scenes expecting one more twist or reveal. But it never came. My gut reaction was to say, that's dissatisfying. But I can see how this vague, doubtful feeling might have been intentional, and as I thought about this afterward, I did recall what one character said to another, that you have to decide what to believe. And I think that might apply to us watching the film as well. I don't know anyone else who's seen the movie, so maybe I'm in a vacuum here. Maybe there's something I missed, maybe something I misunderstood. Hüller's performance is very good, sympathetic even when we're not sure about her. The boy who plays her son also gives a strong performance, especially in one reaction shot near the end. And of course there's the dog, who earned a lot of praise for playing its part so convincingly. I also thought the bilingual dialogue was cool and used in a clever way. I went into this movie expecting that it would all be in French, and I'd be reading subtitles for 2.5 hours. Turns out it's a French film, directed and co-written by Justine Triet, but Hüller's character, like the actress herself, is German, and English is the common ground language that they use in the home. She's not as comfortable in French, and so the dialogue weaves in and out of English and French, so you really have to pay attention. Last thing on this list is a British miniseries, 1980s, To Serve Them All My Days. This 13-episode drama was adapted by Andrew Davies from R.F. Delderfield's 1972 historical novel and stars John Dudding as David Powlett-Jones, a Welshman wounded in the trenches in 1917 and suffering from shell shock, who reluctantly takes a job teaching history at a public boarding school in Devon. This is available on YouTube, but the quality is rough. It's watchable. The audio is very clear, which is good because it is a dialogue-heavy drama. So I felt like, well, it doesn't matter so much that we can't see anyone's face super clearly, as long as we can understand what they're saying. So we were doing okay for the first couple episodes, until we got to the part where there's a fire, and it's at night, there's smoke, we couldn't see anything, and it just went on, and it was like, okay, we gotta do something else. Fortunately, I was able to get the DVDs from the library. This was a viewer recommendation, and the initial premise immediately sold me on it. It didn't take long for me to realize that it wasn't quite what I had anticipated, since I had assumed it would focus on Powlett Jones's rehabilitation, when in reality we moved on from that fairly quickly. The series spans many years, Mr. Chips style, and has more to do with political clashes and cultural shifts in the interwar period. Once I figured that out, I adjusted, and I liked it pretty well. I enjoyed some episodes and storylines more than others. There were certain characters I enjoyed a lot, like Harry's, the good-natured headmaster who persists in believing Powlett Jones is the right man for the job, Howarth, the sarcastic teacher who becomes his senior mentor and friend, even Carter, who has a repellent personality and becomes a professional rival, was kind of a love-to-hate type of guy, and then I came to kind of like him in a way. I was more back and forth on the protagonist. He is sensitive, which can be good, but that can also mean touchy. He is headstrong and impulsive, and he is very passionate about his progressive ideals. This constantly put him at odds with the people who surround him. I wanted to like him 100%. I was really impressed with the way he handled conflict among the boys, storylines in the classroom, in the houses, at the school in general. Those were all very good. But there were a lot of things he said or did that I thought were foolish, or that I disagreed with, that I found unprofessional. And the more the plot focused on his love life, the more I was like, ugh. He would be so sweet and considerate, so earnest, willing to compromise and eager for commitment, yet these two love interests are clearly just using him with no intention of compromising or committing to him, and he's just so, naive about it, and you can see his heartbreak coming from miles away, and it drove me crazy. It's a pretty good miniseries altogether, though. It kept things moving quite quickly, and has some engaging storylines and cliffhangers with a compellingly fallible protagonist. And that's what else I saw in January. I hope you enjoyed this collection of reviews. A couple of them were quite beefy. You can find the titles listed in the description. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you again next Saturday. Thanks for watching.